just put it right here.
Nice. I've never been in here.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I usually like can do some composition of my work right here.
Nice.
Yeah. Because, well, I don't like the software they use on this PC. They use something like Logic Pro, something like Lives, but those software make me feel like they're trying to hiding the functions from the users. You need to figure out, okay, so if I want to change the length of certain keys, I need to click right here and find another menu and another menu and another menu. Yeah. It's trying to hide everything from the user.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I like the software called Cakewalk.
Cakewalk, yeah.
Yeah, that one's amazing.
Yeah.
It shows everything to the user.
I had a really early version of that, I don't know, 10 years ago or so.
Oh, really?
And it was fun. I use Logic mostly now. Yeah, don't really use it that much.
But Cakewalk cannot be used on Mac OS.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't even know what version they're at now, but it was cool when I had it.
Yeah.
I did like it.
Okay, let's
All
go
right,
back to
cool.
So, let's go from the question one. So, sir, where are you from? And is there any famous music genre, any famous music stars from your hometown?
Sure, yeah. Well, I grew up around Charlottesville, Virginia. I graduated high school in '88, and that is a pretty special town because there were some people from New York City who had moved down in the early '80s to reside there, get out of the city, but they were very strong world-class musicians. And one in particular, his name is John Dirth, a trumpeter who ended up, he now directs the UVA jazz program there, but he, in front of my parents who were artists, so there was always musicians around, and so through them I met John Dirth, and he started a youth jazz group that I played in, and then also had the opportunity to play in the UVA jazz ensemble when I was in high school because of him, so I had some early exposure. But because of this particular individual and the people that came with him, the level of the music grew in Charlottesville, and it also, people came there because of him to play music with him. So as a young person, I got to see him play a lot of jazz, which was new to me in a certain way. And it's like, but I looked up to them and I was like, I want to do what they do, you know, what's going on there. So, and through him, I don't know if you ever heard of the Dave Matthews Band, but that band he's largely responsible for that group to be around because those were the people that he was teaching and playing with and whatnot. So at the time, some of those guys, the saxophone player, Leroy Moore, the original player of that band, I played a lot with when I was in high school and early college, and he was around a lot. And the drummer too, Carter Buford, he was just a local guy playing weddings, club dates, da-da-da-da-da. So I had really great exposure to some people like that. We didn't know they were going to be that famous at that time, you know, but they blew up. And but for a small town, there was a lot of great music. There was, there was jazz. There was definitely a lot of rock and roll. And then I got exposed to reggae and blues. So it was a great place to grow up for me.
So it seems like a person in your hometown, he boosted the development of music right there. Well, it seems like the environment for the musicians in America is much better in China than the environment in China, because like there's very bad competition conditions in China. It seems like if you cannot be the top tier of the players, musicians, then nobody will know you. So, everyone who play music, who learn music in China, they try to earn the degrees of famous from the other person and want to defeat everyone.
So it was more competitive.
Yeah.
There's definitely competition here, I would say, but it's not. I don't know. It's hard to say because I mean, there's proof in the pudding. Someone can really play or not. You know, you can usually tell, and the audience knows. And people's attitude has a lot to do with how they're received as well. I mean, it's hard to know what makes you popular and what doesn't, other than being really good at it.
Yeah.
But there is a popularity contest. You know, just some people just like the group and they'll show up and see it, and whether the music's good or not. You know, but yeah, I know in some places it's like there's like one guy in town. He has all the jobs, and everybody's just waiting for him to die. So they, you know, it's almost like the bass players in a symphony. You know, you got like 3 or 4 guys, and they get those jobs for life.
Yeah.
But every year, people are graduating from conservatories, and they have no jobs to get to. So waiting for a bass player to die so they can get that job. You know. So I don't know if that's similar to that kind of thing. One man's the island of the whole scene.
Yeah, occupy all the chances for the other people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They kind of are greedy. So I mean, we have some of that too, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So when was your first time to learn music?
First time I was learning music. My sister is older than me, and she was playing in band at school, and she and her friend came home, and they were playing some music from Star Wars or something, and I was really jealous. I was like, wow, and her friend played the clarinet, and I'm like, I want to play the clarinet because I thought that was cool. So, you know, somehow my parents found a clarinet for me, but it didn't take, and all that, and but I knew from an early age I wanted to play music. You know, as far back as I can remember, but until I got an instrument and started playing was maybe the 7th grade. I joined school band and started playing the bass in the school band. So I would say 7th grade. It's my first educational experience.
So it seems like your family they were all supporting your music.
Very much so. Yeah, my parents are artists, and I've always wanted to be a musician. Never thought twice about it, and they provided lots of opportunities for me with the people that they knew, you know, and kind of really set me up early on to have some great opportunities to kind of get ahead in a certain way with other folks my age. I thought that was good.
Yeah. So this seems like, yeah, you know, the reason for me to learn music, actually when I was a little child, about 5 years old, is kind of family issue because, you know, my mom would like to be a famous pianist, but she couldn't because at that era when she was a teenager, every family in China, they suffered from poverty and they are starving. But you know, my mom was in a rich family and has piano in her house. But at that kind of time era, rich is kind of crime.
Right.
Everybody would be so jealous of you.
Sure.
And report you to the, you know, police or government and said you have more money than the others, but you don't want to donate it or contribute it to the others. So my mom can just like sit right there and stare at that piano and imagine what will happen when she played on it. So after I was born, when I was 5 years old, she said something like I should inherit her dream to play piano. So that's the reason I played piano.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So she never did play the piano?
She learned it by herself after she was 30 years old.
Okay. So after that time period had passed, where it wasn't looked down upon to have a piano.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
She has learned it by herself about 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, let's skip that. So, sir, what's your personal definition of music? What do you think the music really is?
Wow. Well, I think it's possibly the greatest art form that we have, in the sense how it makes me feel, experiencing it. I feel it's more profound than reading or looking at art. Not to discredit anything like that, but I just feel like it's the greatest way that we can almost communicate outside of language, because you can get every human emotion, and more. There's an energy involved. There's physics involved. There's real mathematics. I feel like it just kind of encompasses everything that we experience in a certain way.
Yeah. Like people from all over the world, they're from different culture, but they can all feel the anger, the wrath in Beethoven's symphony.
Yes, right. Or the blues and African American music. You know, we all can go, oh, like, wow, what was that? That made me feel something. You know, and I don't know. To me, just music has been something that just always been there. I can't define what it is, right? It's undefinable in a way, but
so
I want to know how it works. You know, or when you hear something that makes you feel a certain way, how did they do that? You know, there is a science behind it too. You know, but there's also intuition and all these things that I don't know. So it's really hard to explain. But that's a very hard question.
Yeah.
What is music?
So since we mentioned it, I'm gonna skip to another question right here. So do you think people really have music taste, or is it just like the music genre which they are familiar with?
I believe everybody has taste, but I think, like you said, I think most people just gravitate to what they already know, or what they think other people think is good. You know. It's hard to say because there's so many people and there's so many different ways of looking at things, you know, and there's so much music out there now. What is good, what is bad, but if you like it, that's all you really need to know, right? But I do think some people do confine themselves, like I only like this, and this is what I'm going to listen to. But there's nothing wrong with that either. If that makes you happy, you know. But if you're a musician, then I think you definitely should open your doors and listen to every little thing you possibly can.
Yeah. And get more experience.
More experience. And if you really, sometimes if I really don't like something when I hear it, I'll check it out more because there might be something there that's like working on me. And I've done some, for example, I heard Bill Frisell for the first time in 1991, jazz guitarist. And he won all these downbeat polls, like best jazz guitarist. So I went to see him play, and I was like, this is horrible. What is this? I've never heard anything like it before, and it made me angry. And I was like, well, that made me angry, so why? So I went out and bought a bunch of his CDs, and it then became my favorite stuff to listen to after a while. And for years. I mean, he's still one of my favorite musicians, but what he was doing in the early 90s is very different than what he's doing now. But the fact that it made me mad made me more interested. So I feel like that's something, you know, if something makes you mad, most people just walk the other way. Music, I think, is worth checking out. Things like that.
Like we're gonna be like curious when we don't like certain things. We're gonna do some research. Like we want to find out why the other people like it, the reasons.
Yeah. There's always something there. I mean, and even with like super pop music that, you know, most, you know, classical musicians or jazz musicians would be like, oh, that's just not good enough, or that's just pop music. But if billions of people like it, there's something there. There's something there where the value of figuring it out, and even like I used to make fun of Kenny G back in the day, you know, but so many people like that music. What is it that they like about it? You know, so you can find what that is and maybe put it in your thing and leave out the rest that you don't like or whatever. But there's something to be learned from everything.
Okay, sir. So could you please share me your best performance experience?
My past performance?
Your best performance.
My best?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I played pretty good the other night. I've got to say on Wednesday night. I don't know, there's something interesting happening there. But I guess about a year ago, pandemic was still kind of going on. I think I played my first public concert in about a year and a half with my friend Brian Jones, who used to teach drums here, and he's also went to school here, and my friend Daniel Clark on piano. And we had been playing together for 20-some years, but we had this little concert at the Firehouse Theater, kind of like a little opening up, like people still had to wear masks. There may be like 75 people there spread out, and there was just something really special about what happened. The music was just, it had lifted up for some reason. I don't know if it's because we hadn't played in so long in front of people, or it's really hard to describe, but I just felt like there was a flow. Like I wasn't thinking, I was just listening to them, not thinking about myself, and I was playing things I'd never played before, and it was just something really special. It's hard to quantify what made that happen, but I feel like that was my best performance that I remember recently. But as we say, you're only as good as your last solo. And so the last time I played was Wednesday. It was okay.
So at that time, the COVID quarantine, that's really hard time for everyone.
It was very hard, and I had stopped playing for many months. So it's like, well, what's the use, So I went through all these phases where I wouldn't play for a couple months, and then I'll practice a lot, and then drift away, or morph into play electric bass, upright bass, But when that happened, it was just, it's just something really special. And most people in the audience were my friends too, so we were kind of on the spot, kind of nervous. So like kind of playing again for the first time.
So, also it's kind of, I think the COVID, it just built kind of barriers from people to people when they share their like feeling of music or communicate their works on music, right? So at that time, I had class with Professor Isaac through Zoom meeting. He cannot teach me something like how to play certain things hand by hand on the piano through the screen.
Yes.
It's really hard.
I had a very hard time teaching through Zoom. I didn't enjoy it. I mean, some students it worked better with than with other students. Just that had a thing too, and but we made it work. Just made the best out of it. But it was not a good time, I gotta say. Technology will evolve, but I don't want it to evolve to the point where it's all people want to use is Zoom. You got to do the person to person, because like music is, like we were talking earlier, how it's an oral language. Or you copy someone, and you hear someone do that, or they say, "Don't do it like this." Your articulations, but you can't really pick up that kind of stuff on Zoom. Really watching someone do it, being in the same space is really important.
So, okay, let's get back to this. Where am I? Okay, so third, what's the difference, do you think? The difference between classic music and jazz music.
The difference? Mostly, I would say the feel, right? The rhythm is different. So, so now, you can't, to take classical music, there's so much that gets put inside that box, and so much gets put inside the box of jazz. But like, when people say jazz, it could mean Afro-Latin, Afro-Cuban music too, which has a completely different feel as swing music, or bebop. There's so many different genres within jazz and within classical, but you're not going to find, walking bass lines necessarily in classical music. So there's, the similarities would be the harmony, right? But the differences would be the rhythm in general. That would be the simplest way to answer that, I think, without going into depth and sounding silly.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Yeah, rhythm. It's really is the key.
And I think jazz is something much more about your willings. Like we have some models, certain models for people to play in classic music, but like in jazz music, people are usually do what they like to do, but there's no right or wrong.
Well, there is right and wrong in a way. I mean, so what's happening a lot in jazz is there's the improvisation aspect, right? So you have the freedom of being an individual when you play jazz, because you're trying to develop your own voice within the context of the style. And so I guess in classical music, the parts are written out for the most part. I mean, I know at one point way back, hundreds of years ago, people were improvising.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to jazz in that aspect, but now it's come to the point where people read the parts, everything's written out, so you're interpreting what's already being written. With jazz, you have a song, which is just like classical music, they're just songs, but you play the melody, but then you make your own variations, which is your solo, and that's where you bring your own personal view of that. But you know, we have what's phrasing, like how long are your phrases, your melody lines, types of rhythms you're using. So if you're, the wrong way would be playing, out of time on something that is supposed to be straight time or whatever. I mean, like, the ear tells you when it's right or wrong, but jazz gives you the opportunity to be your own voice, so you're not copying what someone else did, or you're not going to play the same thing every time. But we all have, I guess we all have certain phrases that we play, certain things we like to say, and we can say them over every song in different ways. I don't know if you Charlie Parker, the great bebop saxophonist. I mean, you can go through and look at his solos, and he plays a lot of the same stuff, but the way he displaces it rhythmically, or the way he puts it on a different chord, because it sits in a different spot harmonically, it sounds different. And it's genius how he puts that together. But only he could have done it the way he did it. People who copy him can't do it the way he did it. It sounds like a parody.
It's about understanding.
So you have to find your own way. That's the beauty to jazz to me. And then also, you could be a virtuoso, but you could also not be a virtuoso and still play, and people will love what you're doing, and you can improvise within your technical abilities, and still play music that people are going to love. And you don't have to be like Chopin proficient before you graduate. It's really, where do you want to play? Like, where do you want to put it? And so I think that's what I like. It's freedom in a way.
Okay, so this is a pretty personal question. I'm just curious that how, like, as a band, how could you like cooperate with each other when like the keyboard players, like piano players, they do some improvisation suddenly in the performance, in the live performance? How did you guys just figure it out and catch up to not make the audience feel there's any pause or something like that?
Yeah, so that's one of the most important things, especially when you're playing improvisation music. So a friend of mine equated it to a comedy troupe. So if you have some comedians and they're improvising, right, and they're just making up a skit on the stage, you have to support no matter what happens. So if one person does something that you went a different direction than you thought, you can't like stop them and go, and you kind of have to go with whatever they said. You have to support that. So that happens. So the best playing situations that I'm in, if someone does something, we react to it in a way that tries to keep it going. Does that make sense? I think that's the best way I can put it. Is that if we're playing and then someone just does something that's unexpected, we're expected to react to that.
Just follow that.
Yeah, don't ignore it. But you don't have to play. You don't have to play it back. But you could, do something to acknowledge that it happened, or, to make it sound like it was supposed to be there. Because if you do something else, it's gonna be a train wreck, and the audience will know that you're mad at the guy. Or, I mean, it does happen. And so the more you play with someone, like I said, that my friends at that concert, we've been playing 20-some years together.
Habits.
we know, we know our habits, and when we hear something new, we get excited about that, so we react to it, and we're always like, yeah, what was that? Let's do that some more. And even if you don't like it, you still have to support it, and maybe you can fix it somehow or push it.
About the timing, but not just correct it suddenly. Follow it.
Right. And sometimes, musicians, like especially in jazz, that could go out. So you're playing, say we're playing the key of C, and then all of a sudden the pianist goes up to D flat for a second, and then comes back. So as a bass player, I could go with him, or I could stay in C. And so either one is right. But if I go with him, he's not playing out anymore. We're both in D flat.
Yeah.
So if I stay in C, then then you hear that dissonance. So sometimes they don't want you to go with them. So like learning all that, and that really just takes time playing with people. Sometimes you meet someone who you just connect, and it's like you've been playing with forever. But that's probably because you listen to a lot of the same music, or know play with some of the same people and stuff like that. But trust.
Yeah.
You just have to trust, or if I make a mistake, like I have to trust someone will help me back on. And, if they're really listening, they know, oh, Randall needs some help. And like, okay, we're on one now. So we're all like working together, keeping things in line, and also looking for where we can take it.
That's kind of faith you build in the training, inner team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. We're all part of the team, right? You can't have any non-team players, so it won't work. But I mean, of course, there's always there's a great story with Miles Davis. He was doing a great recording called My Funny Valentine's, a live recording, and he apparently told the band right before they went out to play as a live recording that they weren't getting paid, and they were furious at each other. But that's some of the best music ever recorded, and they're trying to mess each other up, but at the same time, they know each other's playing so well that. So that's kind of the opposite of what I just said, but but they had been playing together as a band for so long, and they knew each other's playing so much that just kind of like made each other just uncomfortable enough to maybe even listen even deeper and find new things.
Yeah.
So I think Miles Davis from that point on tried to make everybody mad every time he tried to make a record because he got so much out of that.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so sir, do you think we still get a chance to like write music in a certain new way without any influence from what we are listening? Like when I try to compose something right here, I usually figured out I was just like copying the other music style or some famous music pieces. I really wanted to do something for myself in a really new way, but that's really hard. So do we still got a chance to like create a new music genre or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think most of the time it's by accident that those things get created, and a music lab is a great way to put it. It's almost science, where you like, well, I'm going to take a little piece of this, I'm going to take a piece of that, and put them together. That's usually how new genres get created anyway. Some kind of like gumbo effect. You're just borrowing. So there's nothing new under the sun. We only have 12 notes here, and X amount of chords. No one's going to invent anything new there. And so it's really just a science experiment, putting elements together, and it's endless. I mean, you could take a bass line that you may have heard, change a couple of notes, or take one note out, and then it sounds completely different. And then you could take Mendelssohn lick, call it a lick or something, and well, what does that sound like with that? Oh, that doesn't work very well. And then eventually you'll find something, So I think that's really the process. If you're searching for something different and new, I think a lot of people just write what they think they're supposed to be writing, and they're kind of copying a style and all of that. But still, it's just putting elements together, seeing what happens. And then someone comes along who just finds a way to do it that's different than everybody else, and everybody's like, well, that's the way I've been trying to think about it, but that's what I've been looking for, and they found it, You know, like the Beatles were so big, but there's so much types of music in what they do. You know, like their early things were American blues, like rock and roll. You know, it's just really blues music. You know, the Rolling Stones, they were just doing American gut bucket blues songs in their own kind of way. And that became rock and roll. And so there's really nothing new that they were doing, you know. And same thing with everything else, you know. So like country music was borrowing from blues too, you know, and became something else. It just evolves and evolves and evolves. You know?
That makes sense.
Well, Spanish music plus African music becomes Afro-Cuban music, you know.
Yeah. That's delightful.
Yeah. You know.
Sure. Thank you, sir. That's really delightful. Okay, I'm gonna get to this question now. Okay, so sir, what's your attitude toward the current network media streaming platform like Spotify, TikTok, YouTube?
It's hard for me. I like many aspects of it. It's here to stay, obviously, or it's going to evolve into something even more wild. I love the fact on Spotify I can pretty much get access to anything I want to listen to at any time. I think that's great. But I do miss, you know, buying a record or a CD that has 8 or 10 tunes that the artist put in a particular order. You know, that we've made record people, we spend weeks deciding on the order of the songs, you know, like that's a big deal. And they're presented as a group of songs where now people just get one, and then they move on to another artist, and you know, da-da-da-da-da. You know, there's something about the album or the CD as a group of songs or whatever that is the art in itself too, not just each piece of music. So I think that's missing, the tangible, being able to open up and knowing who's on the record, reading about everybody, who produced it. And Spotify, you don't have any of that information. You just have the band or the artist and the name of the song and whether you like it or not, you know.
Yeah.
And so I feel like a lot of people would know more about what they're listening to. And what's great about the records was growing up, you know, if you got a Miles Davis record, you could look at the back and has liner notes and tells you all about it, and then you see the guys that are playing, and it's like, oh, well, there's Paul Chambers on bass, and you get another record, it's like, oh, he's on this. Well, he doesn't only play with Miles Davis, he also plays with this guy. And then you look more, and he's like, no, he plays with everybody, you know, and then, well, who's this guy? Well, this guy has his own records, and, you know, you can kind of follow a thread.
Yeah.
But I feel like with Spotify, they just feed you the thread. You
Yeah.
know, like, well, if you like that, you might like this too.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to do any thinking, no research. It's less of your own.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like, they're telling you what they think you might like.
Right.
And you might like it, you may not like it, right? But I like the journey of finding things on my own.
Explore.
The exploring, yeah. Which you can do on Spotify too. So I think there's a lot of greatness about it. But the worst thing is the musicians are not getting the money that they used to get. You know, bring up Dave Matthews Band from Charlottesville. They're probably the last band that made a lot of money selling records, you know, in CDs. Like right after that, that's when the big platforms, not Netscape, Napster or something, was that one of the file sharings? So right after they kind of like started selling a bunch, then the whole industry collapsed because of Napster and file sharing. And then we have Spotify and Apple Music and all that. So they're not getting the royalties that they used to get, which is not right. It's, you know, we're all enjoying their work, and they're not getting paid for it. So now everybody has to perform and to play big concerts and, you know, sell stuff out of their car to make money again, right? So.
So, like, from now on, a lot of American students usually use TikTok as kind of platform for them to upload such very short film about 1 minute to 2 minutes, right? And some sometimes they feel like they like certain hook in certain song, they just take it out, just the hook part, as kind of soundtrack for that certain films they upload. So, what's your opinion of this kind of fast food type of platform, music platform? Do you think this type of platform will change the music industry?
I mean, I hope for the better, but I don't see how 1 minute songs, you know, if everybody's just gonna start making 1 minute songs, you know, I don't like that idea. I don't like watching people play on Instagram. That's what I look at mostly, and get a lot of virtuosos for 1 minute, you know, just playing some really incredible stuff, but what can they do beyond that? Can they play in a band? Can they actually play with other people? You know, so it's really just like, just for show. There's some exceptions, you know, some really great players that have made a name for themselves doing that. But I think for the most part, I'm not interested at all. And I try not to post anything. I just want to see people in real life and play, you know, and that. So I feel the pull to want to do it, you know, but I'm not interested.
Yeah. And there's also some kind of issue about copyright. Like, I have uploaded my work in my Chinese web page, homepage right there, and I said the download of that song should be free. After 2 days, I saw a lot of, like, some film editing, they use my song right there without telling me. So.
Right. So they like cease and desist, tell you to take it down? Yeah, right. Yeah, so I mean, I imagine a lot of people are getting stopped for what they're doing, but I think at some point, if you have enough followers, they might be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because then they're, you know, getting that too. So, but yeah, YouTube really started skirting the copyright laws early on, but since YouTube was so big, no one did anything about it. You know.
That makes sense. Well, that's all.
That's all?
Yeah,
Okay.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Hope one day I can take your class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to